Sometimes when we talk about how your worldview affects your quantitative analysis, people start to think that if you do a very simple data analysis, that way you'll avoid putting complicated assumptions into your models or making your worldview an important part of your model. However, simple, naive use of quantitative data can be a very big problem. It does not solve the objectivity issue. Sometimes simple analysis that's done can appear direct and neutral while actually deeply embedding your worldview or the analyst's point of view. For example, this is also real data. We were working in a community that had a youth mental health problem, and we were helping them work with the data to understand what was going on and where to put the limited resources that they had. One of the organizations in the community was very concerned with the racial disparity in terms of youth mental health. So they looked at the data and they divided it up between Black youth and white youth. And you can see here that the Black youth percentage at risk was much greater than the white youth. Another organization in that same community looked at that same data, but instead of breaking it out by Black and white youth, they wanted to look at the male versus female risks because their mandate had to do with gender. And you can see from this that the male youth were much more at risk to have these mental health issues that the community wanted to address. A third organization compared only youth in poverty and youth not in poverty. And you can see that here it was the youth that were not in poverty that were at the greatest risk for having mental health issues. However, when we worked with the organizations, we took that same data and we did a multivariate analysis. So we looked at the gender, poverty status, and racial status all at the same time in combination for the children in this community. And we found something very different than what the simple analysis had found. Previously, the individual organizations only looking at the data one way at a time saw that Black children were at risk, male children were at risk, and children not living in poverty were at risk. However, we found that the white males living in poverty were actually at the greatest risk, and the Black females living in poverty were the second greatest risk. And then the third greatest risk did line up with the simple analysis, Black males not living in poverty. Oftentimes we find that the simple analysis is simply not letting the data speak, it's telling the data what to say. You're dividing the data up along lines that are of interest to you or your organization or your research, rather than looking at the complexity of the data and doing your best to allow the data to speak. So don't be afraid of doing complex statistical analysis as one way to test different worldviews.